Welcome back. Rare Talks, you already know what it is. Like, comment and subscribe. If you haven't already, make sure you go over to the Spotify and check out the exclusive episodes. And this week, I got a special guest to come through. We're going to have an amazing conversation. Introduce yourself to the people, please.
Hi, I'm Shafak from the Shafak Effect, as you know, from TikTok. LinkedIn as well as my own YouTube channel, like Shafak. So I'm happy to be here. We've connected on TikTok, and I'm happy to be Rare Talks guest now.
Yeah. So today we're going to be discussing the issue of colorism, and does it still exist, and what is it that makes people want to stay in this little bubble of colorism, basically. That's what we're talking about today. So first off, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Of course. My name is Shafak. I'm a mind coach, life coach, and also a graduate psychologist. I work with brain injury clients as well in their neurorehabilitation. And I also have different jobs. My background comes from the German Foreign Service. I'm a former German diplomat, as you know, as many of my viewers as well know.
I didn't know that.
Yes, I am.
From Germany?
Yes.
A German diplomat?
I've grown up in Germany.
You grew up, you speak German?
I do.
No
I
way.
speak German, Urdu, Hindi, Punjabi.
Whoa.
I spoke French and Latin as well, and which died out, unfortunately, because of lack of practice. But I come from a very different background in that way, but I found myself in the mental health sector from the last 10 years now, working with various clients from all over the place, from the justice sector to social services to psychiatric units to counselling, which then brought me into psychology, the field of academic psychology, because one of the consultants said to me, when I come into the room and I mediate between the client and the consultant, they feel like I'm their extended arm, which is a very nice compliment.
It's a nice way to feel, yeah.
So I started studying psychology and then went into this field now full time. Found myself working with brain injury clients, which is a very, very different kind of field, because the brain itself just fascinates me. How the behavior is, how the brain works, and how your thought process is.
Do you think there is a one-way of how to think, though? Or do you think that a psychology book can capture ways that people think, but there's no way of actually understanding a human being in general?
There are ways of understanding a human being, and I'll tell you why. Because you have to measure things from the norm. The norm is something how we are actually made to, how we're actually constructed to act, to behave. And that is not something which has just been conditioned. These are innate qualities. So the innate qualities are very similar wherever you come from, all over the globe.
Like, give me an example. Give me an example of that.
Innate would be starting to talk, wanting to help somebody. That is something which are innate qualities from children who do want to do these things. Everything else which we learn over the years, these are conditioned things.
Okay.
But to love, to help someone, altruism, to be happy if we talk to others, engage with someone, social contacts, all these things are innate qualities. Wanting to eat, for instance. Drink.
It's innate, yeah. I understand. So, so you said that you started off so you've been in the mental health industry for 10 years. What kind of things have you seen in the mental health industry?
Everything. I mean, I can go... There is nothing which can surprise me. I've also been in theatres, in hospitals. So I have literally seen, heard, felt everything what you can think of. So from criminal psychology to child psychology to people with personality disorders, to general counselling, social services. I've seen victims of crime. I've seen perpetrators. There is literally nothing which I haven't seen.
I feel like a lot of people that go through psychology, that go into psychology, is because something psychological happened to them that's what I've kind of realized whenever I speak to people that do psychology. When I get deeper into their life, I'm like, okay, so the real reason why you got into psychology was because you really wanted to understand the mind because of stuff that was going on inside your mind and stuff that's going on inside your life. I think that's something that I've always realized with people that get into psychology.
I agree with that. I agree. You can't speak for everybody because I have seen consultants who are maybe academically very, very good, but you can see they do not have any kind of life experiences. So they talk out of a book excellently, but they cannot connect to that person. And but other than that, you are right. A lot of people who do go into this field have experienced in some form of way some trauma in their life. So wherever it's huge trauma, wherever it's less trauma, but there is some ways. I have suffered with a lot of trauma in my own life throughout the years, which then made me to that point where I wanted to understand that in a way what is going on with me. So I was doing a lot of things actively according to psychology, to psychological practice anyway, but without actually the academic understanding of what it actually meant. And to pursue the career of psychology has actually made me understand, has actually tried to actually given me terms to put on why I'm doing certain things.
Do you think people are using terminology, psychological terminologies in incorrect formats?
It depends how you put it. You mean in the British way?
Only in the British way, because we're in Britain. Only in Britain, because we're only in Britain. I can't speak on anywhere else in the world, but I'm just saying, in general, do you think people label people with titles that they don't properly understand?
You know what is important? If we go back to humanity, whether we are Muslims, we're Christians, we believe in the spiritual being, whatever we believe, there is always common thing about that we need to belong. That is just humanity. We can make up whatever we want to do, but we are social beings. We need to belong, which is why we're always looking for something to identify us. We need this identity. This is our urge to be someone, to know who we are. And that is where these terms come from, because they're not there to label you in a certain way that you can't be left or you can't be right. They're just there to give you a guidance of what is happening with you, and then you can work from there.
Because I find it that a lot of people name certain people things without actually properly understanding, and I feel that a lot of kids from young are socially conditioned to believe things that are not actually true. For instance, a kid might have a lot of energy. What that generally means to somebody who has a great mind is that child to be great at this sport or that sport because he has a lot of energy. But they'll label the child of ADHD and make the family seem like their child has a problem, when in hindsight, the child is just an amazingly very energetic, meaning that he's got a very good diet, really. If we're really going to get into it a little bit deeper, that the child's diet is on point, because a child that has a lot of energy means his diet is good. Yeah. Doesn't mean that there's something wrong with him. So why is it now that they've labelled it as a sort of like a mental condition, that the child has more energy or something more than normal people, or that he can't concentrate? Maybe, and I generally believe this, that not every child is academically meant to be great at things, but maybe at something else they're meant to be great at something else. I'll give you an example without using this example. It's the worst example I could give, but I'm going to give it anyway. R. Kelly was a musical genius.
Yeah.
But he couldn't read or write. He was literally silly at school. So when you hear him writing these songs and making this music, like, how did he do this? But he mentally wasn't all there. Does it make sense? From what some people would say, they would say he was autistic to a certain extent. But in his mind, that never held him back from actually achieving great things on the planet. And I think that happens a lot with, you give people too much titles, then that child grows up believing a certain stigma inside of their head. I'm ADHD, that's why I can be like this. Or I've got mental health, that's why I can act like this. Or do you see what I'm saying? So I feel like sometimes we put too much labels on people, which I don't think they're deserving of.
I agree with that. I think it's become too easy to identify or to condition someone in this way, because you don't have to put any work in. There are certain things which have been already labeled, there are certain things which have been already given to this term, and that person doesn't need to do any more work, because all these different type of attitudes, they just fit into that. But where we have to understand is, I mean, in my line of work, because I speak so various languages, I've learned the differences. And the reason why I've learned the differences, I've grown up in an Urdu household, which comes mainly from Pakistan. And my background mixture is Indian, Pakistani, Kashmiri and Persian. So quite a huge mixture. But at the same time, I've grown up in an Urdu household where I've also grown up in Germany, so my native language is also German. But by these things, I started from a very early age to understand people's behavior from different cultures. So in the same way how you would express yourself from a person who comes maybe from South Africa and a person who would be from Alaska, there would be differences there. They could express exactly the same, but the execution would be very different.
Very different, yeah.
So that's where we have to understand that that's what I discovered throughout my work in the mental health sector, that I was capable of doing so. So various behaviors where other people would think that this is abnormal behavior. Why is this person acting like this? Because it doesn't add up to the norm. I then dig deep, and because of my understanding of a language, and because with a language, what you have to understand, you don't actually just learn the language, you understand the culture, you understand the background, you understand the roots, you understand the behavioral differences, you understand the different understanding, absolutely. And that's where I can look through to people and then analyze. And I had quite a few cases where I had to really correct people and say, no, this could be linked to their cultural roots, to their cultural differences, because this doesn't look abnormal to me if you go back to their country. And that is where we need to broaden our horizon at the moment. A lot of things which have been developed, you have to understand, have been developed from the Psychological Society in America about 80, 90 years ago. They did not exist in that form before that. So once they have been created by a certain society, they actually then match up to that society. Now we have to broaden our horizon and go a bit further to that, include different socio-economical differences, cultural differences, and understand why people are behaving in a different way without being abnormal.
Makes sense. So that brings us on to the question of colorism. What would you define colorism as? Because everybody that I've asked about this, they've always had a different explanation of what they define as colorism. What would you define colorism as?
I can only say what I can see in society with colorism. Colorism itself has been created, in my opinion, what I've seen in my research as well, with societal dividends. So how we can divide different groups to make one inferior or superior over the other one.
Okay.
There's no other reason. If you go back to the roots, 500 years ago, prior to British colonialism, colorism didn't exist. The only thing which existed is tribal differences. So one tribe wins over the other one, and they are enslaved.
Facts.
That's all what it was. Nothing else. In no form of way. And we have books from thousands of years which we can read. Color has ever been mentioned. The reason why skin color, different skin tones exist, we have to understand one thing. We are, first of all, genetically, scientifically, one human race. There are no different races. It just doesn't exist. Different races within human beings are inventions by human beings.
Okay.
We all have two arms, we all have one brain, we all have two eyes, we all have a nose, we all breathe the same, we all have blood running through our veins, we all have the same kind of structure, body's biological structure, to 99%. 99% we are genetically the same. If we would be different human races, we would be going back into comparison to Star Trek, Star Wars, where everybody looks different.
Yeah, facts.
You have to look at common sense. Common sense, where it comes from. The only difference which we have is the 1% genetic, which is different in human beings, is where their geographical differences come from, where their heritage comes from.
So would you say that there's no difference in people that are melanated or people that are not melanated? Because melanin does play a big part of someone's where they actually geographically come from. Because if you look at some parts of the world, it's above the tropical equator, and to live there, your skin color might be a little bit more darker, because to live there, you to survive there long term, your skin has to adjust to that sun rays that are coming on.
That is exactly why I'm pointing to the 1%.
Okay.
That is what the 1% makes different, but that's got nothing to do with race. That's got to do with the geographical differences where we originate from. So nowadays we can travel around, we can save ourselves because we have buildings, we have air conditioning, we have aeroplanes, all these kind of different environmental facilities. But they didn't exist at that time, which is why we look different. You know, someone like yourself, for instance, about 1,000 years ago, if you were to live in Alaska, for instance, you would be spotted from far. From the grizzly bears, from all these animals. So it wouldn't help you. The other way around, if someone of very low melanated pigmentation would live in the deepest of Africa, they would be spotted from far, from the lions, from the tigers, and they wouldn't be able to survive. So it's all a survival mode which we have at the moment, which has been given us by nature, by God, by Allah, whoever you want to believe in. But it has been given us for a reason. Because if you go to the animal race, which is a different race to human race, they had to adapt as well to their environment.
Yeah.
You know, a lion cannot survive in Norway, for instance. In normal conditions, it can't, because its body is not made like this. Its structure is not made like this. So in order to understand these differences of this 1% genetical differences, we need to understand why they have been created. They have been created for a purpose. Otherwise, we would be living in the same place. We wouldn't be able to, you know, populate and travel in other places. So colorism, in real terms, doesn't exist. It's an invention by human beings.
So why is it now that you have some cultures that take colorism as a serious thing? Like for me, I come from Jamaica, so colorism for me is that someone to be my skin color, but they want to bleach their skin to look lighter. Like to us, and they'll think by being lighter that they're getting more girls, they're getting more opportunities, everybody like them more, and they're happy with themselves. So where is the idea of colorism pushed into people's cultures now? Let's say, for argument's sake, now we've got tribes and now we've got people's cultures. How did that simultaneously come in together? Where do you think that came from?
That is from conditioning, human conditioning. Human beings, our brain is very easy to be conditioned unless we start understanding ourselves and we start understanding common sense, what is exactly going on. If you look at all these big dictators in the world, you know, from Cuba to Germany to wherever you want to go to, you will always see human conditioning. You will always see finding a reason against another tribe, against another group of people, to bring them together, to make them follow you. So 500 years ago, approximately 500 years ago, East India Company came along. So for people who don't know what East India Company is, it's formed from the British colonialism to go and explore other areas in the world, and then to create economical wealth for them. And in order to do that, they needed to have laborers, they needed to have people, they needed to have the resources, which did not exist in Great Britain at all at that time. So they had to bring out their people to find these resources. And to find resources, obviously no one else is going to give you resources for free. They had to create a strategy. How we're going to actually take that over. And because of people who were natives in various countries, they did not have that knowledge of someone could deceive us. Someone may even take over our property. They did friend with these people, and they did then become familiar, and that is when the war started happening. That is when all these strategies were created. The Bible, for instance, as you may know, was created in a way within slavery to make people believe that black people are inferior to white people. Jesus has been created, and I know that will be actually
the Bible Jesus.
Yeah,
I mean, the Bible
absolutely.
Jesus. Not Esau.
No, we're talking about what has been created in people's perspective. That certain people or position of people hold a certain color. Just to match their comfort itself. We don't know how Esau or Jesus looked like. We don't know because he lived 2,000 years ago. But if we go back to geographical differences, we know how people from the Middle Eastern look like. We do know that. You know, they do not look what has been perceived or portrayed by society nowadays. So that's all I can say about that. But that is how this conditioning came about. So if you start conditioning people over and over time, that this group of people or this person who looks different to us is inferior, and you just create reasons for that, then automatically over generations people start believing these things. That's how conditioning works.
Facts. And you know, conditioning of the mind is a long-term thing. It's never a short-term thing. I can't meet you today and condition your mind in one conversation. I can have an effect on you. I can make you reflect, but I can't condition you. Conditioning is a time period. Like, for instance, if you condition your child to believe that they're going to be great, then your child, it takes years for you to put that and instill that inside of your child.
It's not just years, it's about the tactic, how you do that. So in psychology we say we combine a certain attribute or a certain behavior to a certain action.
Okay.
So if you combine that action to a certain behavior over and over again, our brain memorizes these things. That's how conditioning works.
No way.
Automatically. So the same way how a lot of people nowadays have brought up coming away from color, just talking about beauty, for instance, in social media. People start believing, beauty has to look a certain way. We have to have a certain way about us. We need to do certain things. That is all about conditioning. But at the same time, if we wanted to go back to the roots and recondition ourselves, we can also do that in the same way. I have an approach which I do with my clients as well, which you practice every day, every morning, in looking into the mirror when you go to the bathroom, and tell yourself with eye contact that you're beautiful, you look stunning today. All these kind of lovely, positive things. After 30 days, you will start believing that.
I believe that whatever you tell yourself a lot of, then it becomes your reality.
That's right.
The law of attraction and the mindset and changing your paradigm. I believe in that wholeheartedly, with all my heart. I believe that whatever you tell yourself enough, you will become. Does it make sense?
That's right.
If you tell yourself you want to be a scholar of Islam, and every day you wake up, you take steps towards that, then you will act in accordance with that.
That's right.
If you tell yourself you're a drill artist and you want to drill ops, even if it's not true, it will become your reality. And that's why I tell some of these young boys and girls out there as well, like, be careful what you push out in the atmosphere on yourself. Just be careful of it in general, because what you say will come to pass. It's just natural. It's just as humans what we say and what we do. You know what I'm saying? They say a man is judged by his actions, but it's also judged by his words. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? They say a man's judged by his actions, but he's also judged by his words. So if you see a man all the time speaking about killing people, and you see him one day, you're automatically going to think, is he in this kill mode right now? But he might just be in chill mode. But you have that concept of what he's saying. You don't know his actions. You don't know what he's doing in his personal life. But you take him as what you see. Exactly. So whatever you say to yourself a lot is what you will eventually become.
I mean, a very easy example is look into the media. How is the black community being associated? Every time a crime comes up committed by a black person, the color will come in between. The black man or the black woman or the black child has committed this crime. When you go into, and that is conditioning, what we're talking about. When you go into, for instance, I don't know, person from Pakistan, for instance, just after the 211, is it 11? 211? Yeah. So if you look at that, the Muslim community, the Pakistani community has been automatically associated with Islamophobia, terrorism. So this is how conditioning works. If you keep telling things or broadcasting things over and over again and makes this association to a certain group of faith people, background, then people will automatically memorize, and that is what we're talking about. Automatically, you can, if you look at common sense in general, you can recondition your mind. You can go back to roots. You can start asking questions.
That's the hardest thing to do.
Why? Yeah.
That's the hardest thing to do, because when the mind's been conditioned a certain way, it takes probably generations to unlearn bad habits. It's not an overnight thing.
It only starts one person to do it for yourself. It takes generation. We cannot change the world from tomorrow. We cannot. But what we can do is change ourselves. One person at a time. That's how it starts working. So I'm so passionate about bringing out the truth, common sense in people, against colorism, against racism, because I feel at the moment, down to the point that people are asking me wherever I'm black, my heritage, because they're questioning why I'm so passionate about it. The reason why I'm so passionate about it, because no other part of human beings have been actually so degraded over the last 500 years. Yes, Indian Pakistanis have been suffering with British colonialism as well, but they have never been derooted from their identity like the black community has.
That's a fact. And
we just have to go back to facts. We have
I
to
don't
go
wanna,
back to
I don't
history.
want to accept what you're saying, but I have to accept what you're saying, because Pakistanis and people from Bangladesh, they still have some cultural ties inside of their foods and inside of their languages. And a lot of people don't actually understand a language, when it's stripped from you, is your whole identity gone. Because there's things in your language that if you say it in a certain way to someone, it means something. You don't have that when your language taken. Someone gives you something and then you have to use it in that way. And that's why if you look now, a lot of the street kids, they have their own way of even expressing themselves. They've created a new thing. And I never forget, because even me, I've got a little bit of it myself. Does that make sense? Even though I'm Jamaican and we speak a little bit different anyway, but I'm saying I've still got some of that as well, because of that's just our conditioning again, that we all speak a certain way to escape the normality of wanting to be back to what we originally was, because we've lost part of our identity. So I definitely agree with you on that one. I definitely 100% agree with you.
And that is a huge point where I want to take away this stigma, this misconception that a black person is only associated to certain attributes, which is why I brought out that clip. I don't know if you looked at that clip where I'm talking about black inventors, because it happens to be Black History Month in the US. So I thought I'd bring out something which is really resonating to people, and it's not being educated. It's not about a race between a war between black and whites or yellow and purple. I don't really care how you look like. It's about bringing out societal issues and making people actually relate to someone who is in a good position, who has achieved something, to motivate them, to bring out this spark so they can believe in themselves again. We're coming back to self-identity, because the self-identity has been taken away from a certain group of people. It needs to be brought back in some form of way, so people can believe in themselves again, and we can come away from this person can only be a criminal, or this person will take our culture away.
But it's funny that I've never actually ever had an inferior complex in my whole life. there was one time where I was with my friends, I'd act a certain way, but I never had an inferior complex. And what I mean by inferior complex is feel like I'm less than anyone in society. I've always had a king complex, if I'm honest with you. Because from a very young age, my mum always used to tell me that I was a king without a crown. So I've always walked through life thinking that I'm just like some king. So when I step into a building or I go somewhere, I expect it to be treated a certain way because of just me being me. Not because of my skin colour, but me as my personality, who I am, my family, my lineage. This is the stuff that I hold dear to.
But you know where that comes from? It comes from your culture. I know by fact that Jamaicans themselves have a very different attitude to life than people from a black community from other parts of the country or from other parts of the world. So it depends on your culture. If your culture has been brought up to believe certain things, then you won't have these kind of feelings within yourself.
Yeah, I've never had that kind of like feeling, oh, you know what, the world's against me. The reason why I've not got hair is because I'm black or this. I've never suffered with that. My whole life, I've never suffered with that. I've always been able to maneuver and get through with everything that I've done. Obviously, I've felt certain things in my life because that's just life in general. You go through stuff, but I've never actually myself like gone through like a time in my life where I'm like, you know what? I'm not happy with my life. Right? I've never actually gone through that, if I'm being 100% honest with you.
I mean, that's the privilege of being a Jamaican, I guess. Yes, I mean, we're coming back to culture again. You know, it's all a cultural belief. It's all a cultural conditioning. If you have been conditioned that way, then you're fortunate to come from Jamaica, because I know Jamaican attitudes very, very well because of personal experiences. So they do have a way of beliefs which actually takes away this inferiority feeling away, which other people may have. You know,
I think it comes through the way that we're grown, the music that we listen to. Because for Jamaicans, music is like a big thing in our culture.
It's very powerful.
It's like one of the most powerfulest things in our culture that we have. That is an unseen. It's like you treat your woman is your queen, you're her king. You run your castle. This is what life is. This is what life ain't. This is what we need to do. Fight against the Babylon. It's like there's a lot of stuff in Jamaican culture that shows you your self-worth. Like even when people might see certain negative things attain to Jamaican people, there's always a positive outside of that. So if you see a negative, there's always going to be a positive outside of that. Trust me. When you hear people talking, you'll be like,
I agree. Whoa. I mean, there's a joke about as well. If ever there were terrorists on a plane, you would not want to fly with Jamaican Airline. And we know why.
Trust me on that one. Trust me. Bare brave man on that plane.
That's right.
But
it comes from somewhere.
Yeah, I feel like I've never, me personally, I can only speak for myself, I've never actually suffered from that inferior complex. And I think even other places in the world, I think that some people, because even when I went to Africa, you'll never see someone refer to another person as black. And terminology doesn't exist. Like, they would refer to someone as their tribe or their father's name. So they'd be like, that's Ibn Muhammad. That's Muhammad Ibn Shafiq. He was the first man that came in there and built this village. And you're like, oh, is it? Like, you get history from someone's name. Yeah. You won't hear a man say, oh, that's that black you or that black guy. Or, like, we don't refer to each other like that. I think only in the West where there's a inferior stuff that's put on us because of the way the society is, the culture,
not
and
just the West, but also other cultures as well. They have been conditioned by the same way than the West society.
How do you think that's been conditioned in like the Pakistani community?
Pakistani, Indian. I mean, I must say it's very similar. Pakistani, Indian community, Iranian community, Arabic community, very, very similar to each other. The way how it's been conditioned is that you fairer you are, you prettier you are being presumed by society. You darker you are, you less attractive you've been perceived by society. That is just how they believe in. It's very, very sad to see, because even within themselves, within their own society, people who are of darker colour have been perceived as not being attractive in general. But then you bring someone in from the black community, and that goes to a totally different level, because the tolerance level just goes down completely. There is a very, very strict mindset of associating again the black community to certain habits, to certain ways, to certain looks. You will never see, or I wouldn't say never, but the majority of that kind of background will never perceive a black person as handsome or pretty or attractive.
You think that's changing though? Because I feel like on society, like, all right, cool, like we got like so many black entertainers nowadays, and we got so much black influencers. It's kind of hard to deny the beauty. It's like it's there in front of your face. I feel like the younger generation coming up are less. I think they're less racist than the elder generation. I think the elder generation hold on to that very dearly, but I feel like the young, because if you're growing up in a society where most of the people that you went to primary school with, secondary school with, college and university are all black, you get to understand culture. You start to say, oh, them man are Nigerian, them man are Jamaican. You know the difference between people, because I think sometimes people, even us as humans, we'll look at a color of people and we're like, they're Chinese, but the person could be Singapore, or the person could be from Japan, or the person could be from North Korea. They want to be identified with the place that they're from. They don't want to be associated with Chinese people because they're not Chinese people. But look how we say, oh, they're just Chinese people. Same with Asian people. We'll say, oh, they're just Indian. But really, they could be Pakistani or Bengali. So there's a difference between the two cultures, and the people inside of it know the differences, the languages, everything, and they know the differences.
The young generation is slightly changing. I agree with that. But because the older generation of that belief is still there, it holds a lot of pressure on them. So you will see very, very few, for instance, having a relationship outside of their culture. They would prefer having a relationship with somebody who is from a Caucasian background than from a black community. That is just fact.
Yeah.
And the point is, once with a man, it's even different then, because men are generally allowed a lot more leverage than female are from that part of culture. But if a person from that culture goes out or even dares to marry someone from the black community, that person is shunned for life.
But you know, I find
they may tolerate that person. I'm not saying that they would completely disconnect with that person, but it will always be seen as an outsider.
It's funny that you say that, because just recently I've done some history. I was just studying some history. Just, you know, I just come across lots of books. When I go into bookshops, I just buy books about history and stuff. And this is going to sound shocking to a lot of people, but I found out that the original man that they say was on the planet first, that he was in the Indian subcontinent. And then I found out what the tribe was, and they're still alive to this day. Some tribe that's been for like hundreds of thousand years. This tribe's been on this little village. I think it's near India. It's like offshore of India on some island.
Yeah.
And they're very dark. They're like my skin complexion, but they're Indians. That's where they're from. I don't know if Indian people would class them as Indians, but to me they looked Indian, but they looked black as well. So I said, wait a second. Does that mean now that, would you say now, this is what I was starting to say, I was saying, right, so does that mean that part of all skin colours and tones come from Asian people? So how can Asian people be racist towards anybody with a skin colour?
But that is, again, the conditioning which has been created over the last 500 years to believe that certain colours or certain tones of colours are superior to others, or have been seen better to others, which is where the success comes again, why people bleach their skin colour, because they believe they would hold a better and higher positioning in society. It's very, very sad to see. I mean, I fight with my own people all the time. Even on my TikTok, sometimes I have to say to people to hold back from these things and stop these things. Obviously, I can't take it out of them, because if something is deep-rooted in someone, you can't. It takes time. If somebody is willing to do so also. Because sometimes what it is, that even if a person wanted to change, because of the pressure they have, the ties, the family ties they have, they don't go ahead and do that. And that is a very crucial thing. The biggest punishment you can give, because we're a social being, is to deprive you from your social connections.
Yeah.
So your family, your friends, and that is what automatically happens, what a lot of Asian families do. If they don't like something, what you're doing, they will deprive themselves from you.
But then I would say, does that even make it worse when someone's even a Muslim? Because now, like, for instance, somebody's reverted to Islam. I'm giving you just a basic example. And I've got a movie coming out about this soon as well. It's not a movie, but it's like a short movie about this. It's about
documentary or
no,
movie?
It's actually a movie.
Okay.
It's about the Asian dad and the black man. Basically, they meet each other in the mosque. The dad teaches him about Islam. The boy's a revert. He comes to Islam. I'm gonna give you the whole story. I don't care if someone steals it. I know I'm gonna probably, it's already in the making already. So basically, he meets the father.
Right.
Him and the father get connected in the mosque. The father doesn't know anything about this boy, but he sees that he's a new Muslim and he wants to teach him. So he loves him. He invites him out, helps him get a job, changes his life around. Cool. He loves him because he met him inside the mosque and because he's a new Muslim.
Right.
Every day the boy's coming there. Every day the dad is trying to teach him about Islam. Now what happens is this boy, he's in the same age as the man's daughter. They go to the same school.
Right.
Now he has always liked the daughter, but the daughter's always said, I can never be with someone who's not Muslim. But he said, I didn't want to turn Muslim for a girl. I turned Muslim for myself. So now that he's Muslim, he's approached the girl and said, look, I want to marry you. And the girl said, you have to speak to my father. Yeah. You know where this is going now. You kind of know where this is going now. You know where this is going.
I do.
And
I have the picture in my head already.
Yeah, so now the dad has invited the boy around for food to the house. He said, look, I want you to come round and try some Asian food. You love biryani. It's the best food. My biryani, the best. And my wife and my family, we're going to show you hospitality. Because let's be real, Pakistani, people from the Middle East do have very good hospitality. They're very hospitable people. You go to their house, they're making sure you're very taken care of very nicely. They're not just leaving you there for 1 hour with no tea. You're drinking tea, you're very comfortable. They're giving you everything you need.
You can't come out with an empty stomach at all.
And a good mind as well. They make you feel good as well.
That's right.
So what happens now towards the end, and this is actually a real scenario that happens a lot. So this is why I brought it up. The boy has gone around to the girl said to her father, I'm going to invite a man around who wants to potentially marry me. So the father said, no problem. Now what happened was the day that he was meant to come to the house for the father, he cancelled it. The boy cancelled it. But now the day that he's meant to come around for the girl, he's coming. Because he said that's more important. So he's come around, knocked on the door, and the dad saw him and said, Assalamu alaikum, like, what are you doing here? And he said, I think I might be in the wrong house. And then the daughters come and said, no, this is my house. So the dad looked at her and looked at him and said, what's got? And she said, this is the guy that I was telling you, Dad, and I told you if you're going to have a problem. And the dad said, no, get out of my house. I don't want you here. And then he's like, what? But you invited me to your house already. He said, no, you can't come to my house. He said, but you invited me to your house anyway. I didn't even know this was your daughter. This is all like, for me, this is like qadr, isn't it? Allah's wrote this. He said, no. This is not going to ever happen. You're not part of this. You can never be part of our family. And he starts shutting the door in the language, start speaking other language to her. And then he shut the door, and then the guy's like shocked, and then that's where it ends. The reason why I wanted to do that is because I believe
that is a very real story.
Very real story, and it happens so much. Yeah. But the only problem is it's not put on a big scale.
Yeah. The reason is because you have to understand the mind of the Asian society. And I'm talking about general Asian society. It's not just Muslim. It's including Hinduism, including different faiths. It's general the Asian society, Middle Eastern Asian society. They do not want to be portrayed as someone who's intolerant. That is just the case. They do not want to be portrayed. Everything needs to be put under the carpet. Because if you look at the way how the culture works, someone who's younger meant to listen to the older person, regardless of their right or if they're wrong, if they're talking the truth, if they're talking false. But that's how the society works in the Asian culture. When you've been brought up in the Asian culture, you're meant to listen to your elders, whatever, regardless of what they're saying. And that's something which they want to continue because they want to keep their culture alive. They don't want somebody to rebel against them. And because to rebel against something would mean in their eyes that their culture will break. Somewhere along the line, they will lose that person. or something will change.
It's sad because for that brother that went through that, scarred him now to do with.
Yeah.
He's associating, and this is what a lot of people don't actually understand. He associates that bad experience to Islam.
Yeah.
That has nothing to do with Islam.
Yeah.
But because he thought it was all love in Islam and brotherhood and blah blah blah. He's relating now this bad experience to Islam. Now people might not think, oh, this is not a lot of cases and it's only one out of. If that keeps going on, what do you think societally, long term, the effect of that will be? That will be people having stereotypes towards other people. Exactly. Now, he might have kids. He might get into a marriage with another woman and have kids. Now, that kid could be wanting to marry his daughter. They could be Asian. He said, no.
Yeah.
Because he's already got a preconceived notion in his mind of what's going to happen.
And that is already in society. We see that every day. I mean, I work, as I said, in the mental health sector, and I've seen a lot of Asian families. Believe me, I've seen a lot of Asian families happening to, where I thought first, when I went through a lot of things in my life, through various traumas, through various really, really bad things, I thought I might be the only person in the world. Why is that happening at that time? But suddenly you are faced through the grace of the Almighty with these challenges, seeing other people happening that too, and you find yourself as a very, very small case, as a very, very small person in this wide world where all these things are happening, and you see the issues, and they're big. They're still very, very big. We could go on with that for hours and hours and hours, because they do not stop, unfortunately, which is why I'm so dedicated in promoting or in actually removing the stigma about the black community, because I do not like that. And you have to understand, it's ungodly. Let's put it there. It's ungodly.
But what's the hate that you get from the Asian community because of this? Because obviously, if you're doing this, Asian community must be like, what's wrong with this woman? Do you get a lot of backlash from your own community more than any other community?
Oh yes, they do. First of all, it goes back to the faith. Or as a Muslim, you shouldn't act like this. What's that got to do with faith? Nothing at all. Nothing. Second thing, it comes then back to, okay, which other tactics would be used? She's a woman. She should behave in a certain way. Then the other tactic is, do you not like us? Yeah. Then another tactic will be, where we're coming back to racism again. As soon as I put up something from to benefit or to motivate a certain group of people, another group comes up. But what about us? We've done this.
I hate that.
And that is where you're actually taking the focus away from the actual point. I'm not talking about your community right now. I will come into that when it's time. I'm talking about this community. That's what we need to focus on, because there's a problem there.
I think you see that point right there. That was the nail on the head. Whenever you talk about one topic, there's always another person that feels neglected. But that's because I feel people don't feel accepted inside of themselves. So there's an inferior complex.
And it's not just this. If people feel attacked by something,
but why?
Because they don't.
It's just a post. How can a post make you feel attacked?
A post can make you feel attacked if something is going for your benefits all this time, and something else comes up which contradicts that or corrects it. That's when you suddenly feel something is attacking you, because suddenly your benefits and the position you hold will be jeopardized. That's all what it is. It's all about power.
It's funny, man, because I find colorism the most stupidest thing. I look at everybody.
I've brought up my kids, and I don't talk much about my family because they have their own life, they have their own rights to come on. But I've brought up my kids in seeing no color. They will talk to you. They will judge you based on what they like, your character. That's the most important. If they don't like your personality, they will not get along with you. If they like your personality, you could come from any, and that's not just color. That's about social status, background, culture.
But would you say that with the black community, though, for example, you would have to teach your kids, twice as much because I was asking. This is a question I got to ask you, yeah, and this is a real life question because I've always wanted to know the answer to this. Someone said, if you go over Asian women, you don't care about black people. I said, all right, cool. Let me tell you how that doesn't make sense. This is what I said to him. This is my opinion. As if a black man and an Asian woman have a child, what color does the child turn out? What is the skin tone of the child?
It's just a mixed skin tone.
The child's coming out brown.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
It's coming out brown. So what are you talking about? Because we're all brown anyway. So what you're saying doesn't even make sense.
I mean, in real terms, there is no black melanin.
Yeah, of course.
It doesn't exist.
But what I'm saying is...
Neither is white.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is, if for a black person to say they're standing up for black power and all this rubbish, but then you're with a dark-skinned Asian girl and have a child, the only thing I can see differently there is a little bit of culture. I cannot see from skin tone there's a difference. I just can't see.
But there you have to go back to the roots. It's the same about the fear from Asian families mixing with black community within their children, having a relationship. The same fear goes to the other party as well. They have a fear about them. That's why we need to take this fear away, because they feel...
Is it fear or shame? Is it fear or shame? Because I'm starting to think this is not fear, this is shame. Because bringing a black person into the household, people were like, why did you bring a black person? Look at them people, they're low, good people.
The fear is about shame. Because most people, and you know that, you would know that as well, if you follow the Quran or the Bible, Torah, any of them, it would say that most people live by the opinion of others. How other people think of them, how the society think of them. That's why we have to draw the line. This is shirk. If you want to understand shirk means anything or anybody you put in between your relationship to God.
It's associating partners with Allah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if you have a societal pressure, that is what shirk is. You could go 5 times to the mosque or to the church, whatever you want to do.
I'd say sometimes to a certain extent, kufr could be seen as kufr, meaning disbelief. The reason being is because Shaitan, the first ever racist person in history, said, I don't like Adam because I'm better than him. Yeah. That arrogance, and then he put what he thought was better. He said, I'm created from fire and he's created from clay. Right. So to a certain extent, and Allah disgraced him and he's in the hellfire forever. He's finished forever. And that was only because of his arrogance. Yeah. So I feel like the arrogant part of people that make them feel like I'm so much better than this race of people, even though in the eyes of Allah, he doesn't even look at us like that. He's looking at what's inside of the heart and the actions and the person's belief and all this. This is what the things you're going to be judged on, not judged on man's skin color.
Not even to your social status. Look at the people who buy, I'm going to build 10 mosques and 10 churches or whatsoever. You can't buy your sins out. It doesn't work.
You're going to be recouped for whatever you've done. So I can see to a certain extent, if somebody has that ideology of being arrogant to the point where they think they're better than someone, in reality, when they're not, then that could be, I'd see that as like kufr, maybe disbelief. To that, if we pull it on that level of...
But that is, again, it's a form of shirk as well. Shirk in general means if you put something in between the relationship between you and God. If you put yourself between you and God, it's the same concept. Because you're playing the part of God. You're playing the part of power, being better than somebody else or feeling better than somebody else.
I don't know. I can't see that shit. I see it's kufr, disbelief. Like you just disbelieve because you think that your arrogance has made you so high and pumped that you've got pride now. Because pride, I think pride and shame are so similar in hand to hand, how they are. You have someone who's prideful and they don't like to be disgraced and shamed. You see the saying? So if I've got a lot of pride and you try to shame me, I'll die. Because I don't want you to... So that pride, we need to start putting that to one side and start putting logic to one side.
That's right.
In a society, if you're raising your child in the Western society, there is an 80% chance that your child might like someone outside of your ethnicity.
That's right.
There's nothing wrong with it, and it's just the society that you're in. If you don't want that and you're 100% against that, then go back to your native land where your child will only see their own people.
That's right.
And there would be a 20% chance of them meeting a black person in the rural areas of Pakistan, very, very rare. But even then, I think there's a colorism problem inside of Pakistan itself, because you got the dark skinned Pakistanis and then you got the light skinned Pakistanis, but they look at the light skinned Pakistanis as more attractive than the dark skinned ones. In my eyes, everybody's attraction is not based on even looks anyway or skin complexion. It's really in the mind and the heart and how the person is as a person. That's what I take it as anyway. I've always took it as that. But I don't know how some people, there still has to be obviously a physical attraction. The person has to physically suit your eye. So you're like, ooh. But I don't think that's the be all and end all. So I think even in certain cultures, people have the colorism issue where the darker the skin of the person, the less.
And that's what we were talking earlier about. It is there, unfortunately. And I'm just dedicated in changing it within people as much as I can, because I don't believe in it. I don't find it godly at all. I find it very ungodly, and you mentioned Satan as well in that way, that this has been brought in us to divide us. This has been brought in us to feel empowered over somebody else. And that is not where society should go, because if you go back to child psychology, and I keep bringing it up, if these things were right, children would not mix with each other. They would not play with each other from various different backgrounds, looks, cultures, even genders. They don't really care.
Kids are just...
They don't. They just see, oh, there's a playmate, I want to play with this person.
Or they know him by his name, or that's it.
That's right.
Kids know each other by their name.
That's right. Or that person hurts themselves. That's where we come back to altruism again. That person hurts themselves. The other person, the other child automatically wants to help. They automatically feel these compassion, these emotions. These are innate qualities within us to provide, to help, to care for each other. So why we let that get taken away by societal conditioning?
Facts. And I think that comes down to we as people, like you said, there's something beautiful that you said, and it goes in line with what says in the Quran. The last paragraph says, we'll never change a condition of people until they change what is inside themselves.
You can't help anyone unless they want to help themselves. It's the same in my line of work as well. I can't help a client if they don't want to help themselves.
Yeah. And I think that comes from self-reflection. You know, a lot of things come from within, you know. A lot of things come from within, like just mindset of who you are and where you want to be in life. I think a lot of things come from the mind. That's why it's good that if you understand the mind, you can help people to try and further them towards what they want to get. A lot of people are not suffering from anything other than maybe identity crisis, not knowing themselves, not loving themselves. As small as as easy as this might sound, for some people they're really struggling with this and not even knowing that they're actually struggling with it.
I mean, nowadays you have to understand that, especially even post-pandemic, a lot of people are suffering. And that doesn't mean everyone has to have a mental health condition. It just means that everyone has mental health imbalance.
Of course.
So as soon something is wrong and something we don't feel right with, we have a mental health imbalance, and there's nothing wrong with that. We just need to be aware of that, create awareness of this, and then address these things to our benefits, not to someone else's benefits, to our own benefits. Because the time when you start healing within yourself, you start understanding yourself, you start discovering yourself, which is part of my program, the Shafak Effect, which is why I've created that originally, that you need to understand that all these different conditionings which have been happening through your upbringing, through your understanding, through your academic learning, anything which you absorb, they are not always from you. So you have to dissect them and then go back to the roots and start understanding which of these parts are actually really us or myself, and which of these parts are not good for me. They're actually holding me back. Because if nothing was wrong, why are we not 100% happy? Why are we not walking along smiling everywhere? Why are we not talking to people in a positive way? Why are we not loving? If there's something wrong, then you need to start understanding, go back to the roots. Why is that wrong? What is actually holding me back in this internal fulfillment? Once you have this peace within yourself, and I can tell you that from my own experiences, regardless of what I'm experiencing even at the moment, once I created this peace within myself, it automatically comes out. It automatically radiates to other people, and people are attracted to that without me actually wanting it. I'm not looking for any attention. I don't need any attention. But people do want this ray of light because they have a certain difficulty in their life which they cannot manage, and they think this positivity might help me to manage that. But unless they understand that I can only soothe their pain, I can only guide them to the light, but I cannot actually bring them out to make the first step outside of that box.
Facts. And that's the reason why we need more people like yourself to be bringing people out of that. I think I commend you for the positivity that you bring on your channel and you bring to other people. It's really good, and it's a breath of fresh air in a world full of so much toxicity and so much craziness and people all trying to do all kinds of stuff for clout. It's hard to, when you see a genuine person being nice, to think that they're being nice. See, that's the problem. We've even been conditioned to believe that when someone's being nice, they're being fake.
I get that told all the time. Absolutely. There must be something wrong with that.
Just because you're actually being nice. It's a little bit crazy in our minds that we actually think someone's being nice and we think they're being overly nice, you know. Something's wrong with that person.
Yeah.
I can feel it. It's like that's the illness inside of ourselves. When you see that, I feel like that's why we need more people to just keep doing it, so it becomes a norm. Just like we've been conditioned to feel negative about everything, we should be conditioned to feel positive about things.
That's right. It's about persistency. It will get there at some point. Maybe not change the world, but even if we can change a little area, you know, some people, that can also help. And it's a blessing.
Of course.
It's a blessing to be, you know, the way how I present myself in social media is no different than I would talk to you in private, or I would talk to somebody else, or I would go to work, I would talk to my family, my friends. There's no difference at all. And that's when people need to understand, once you self-discover yourself, it is a beautiful feeling. It is something which is absolutely divine. You can't describe this peace which you feel within yourself. Yes, I still get emotional because that's me being human being.
That's a human being. Yeah,
that's we cannot be perfect. We can be affected by things, but it's how you change the perspective, and that's how I say to people as well. Once you start changing your perspective of what you experience, because we all experience something. You've experienced something in your life, I've experienced something in my life, but it's what we learn from these experiences, that's what counts. I create opportunities for myself from my experiences. Now, I've grown up, for instance, in an Urdu household. I had no idea about Punjabi. It's just a little thing, for instance. My first marriage was a very heavy-speaking Punjabi household. I've learned Punjabi, their behavior, their language, the way how their tone works, the different cultures, the way wherever they come from, south, from north, it's all differences, just by listening. And I thought to myself, yes, that marriage has been horrible. He was a really, really difficult man. But what I've learned from that is suddenly, once I came out of that and I went into first linguistics in the mental health sector, progressed very quickly into the mental health sector, I thought, that was actually beneficial for me because I've learned something from that, and I'm now applying this into society. I can understand why a Punjabi person is behaving a certain way, and someone who comes from Germany is behaving in a very, very different way.
You know, it's when you go through life, and I tell everyone this, when you go through life and you take bad experiences and see good in them, there's something called no regret and no malice and no hate. Saying this last night to someone in one of my lives, imagine that. I was actually speaking about this yesterday, and this is what I said, and I've been saying to people for the last 2, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. Everything that I want in my life has been attracting to me. Everything. But the only reason why that's been happening is because I'm on my purpose, and I'm living for my purpose, not living for people, not living for opinions, not living for hate, not living for nothing. I'm living for my purpose. Your purpose is so important to be upon, to understand. When you can take a bad experience and take good from that experience, then you've won. It's people that live in bad experiences that fall into depression.
That's right.
And they have a life filled with talking about the past, then focusing on their present, so they never have a positive
because
future.
they're trapped. They're trapped. They do not see what's happening because life is always evolving.
Of course.
That's what we have to understand. If you're trapped in a certain event, in a certain position, in a certain person, you will never see the goodness of how you're evolving or how you could be. And you will miss out opportunities. You will miss out jobs. You will miss out careers. You miss out partners. You miss out relationships. You miss out a lot of good things if you're trapped in that moment. So you have to let go.
Have to. And I think that's one thing I've been...
but you have to be able to manage how to use these experiences into your life as well. So it's not just about using these as good things or looking at them in a different perspective. How you use them into your life to progress, that's what counts.
I think personally for me, I only can speak on my own personal experiences. I've looked at every bad experience as a good experience, as a learning curve, and I've just moved forward. I don't even take some things with me. You know, a lot of people, they carry baggage around with them, yeah? So they get into a new relationship, they get into a new business partnership, and they think of what someone else done to them. So they always have this kind of wall up, and they never let their walls down.
Yeah.
I could be hurt 60 times, yeah? But I will never stop being the person that I'm going to be. Yeah. I will never let that person be the master of my destiny and of how I treat people. I will never let nobody do that to me. I don't care if I went through the worst relationship or the worst friendship.
I mean, you have to differentiate two things. There's one, having experiences, bad experiences. The other thing is going through really severe trauma. For instance, a person who's been raped.
That's big, yeah.
Unless you overcome these things, you will always fear certain things in other people. And that is understandable, but you then need to find the healing for yourself. You need to find what is actually stopping you. What is the trigger point? Why are you actually associating certain traits to a certain gender, for instance? You know, I can talk out of experiences. As I said, I've gone through a whole lot of trauma myself, but I had to process this information over time to understand why certain things are happening. I've gone through these traumas, developing into a natural empath. So from trauma, I went into wanting to become the healer. So some people they become victims, they become victims of crime even, or perpetrators. I decided I wanted to become the healer because I don't want anybody else to feel what I felt. But at the same time, what I didn't understand, and that's why I needed to progress within my healing journey, is that I needed to set my own boundaries. In becoming the healer, I also attracted the people who are not good for me.
That's the problem, and that's a problem that when you have to know what you're willing to put up with and what you're not willing to put up with, and you've got to make that stick, and you've got to set from the start. And not be afraid to say it. I think a lot of people...
But you can't set something from the start if you don't understand it. So when I felt I wanted to become the healer, automatically it progresses. I needed to understand also that I needed to heal myself. So once I start focusing on myself, that's when I start putting boundaries in. Means certain people do not need to be in my life, for instance.
Straight.
So I needed to have the awareness that I know, because I'm an over provider, over carer, and want to suddenly heal you, that person may not need it or should not have it because it does not deserve it. Yeah. Not that it does not deserve my care, but that person does not deserve this in their life, because they need to find their own way, or they need to find their own journey first before they start hurting me.
Facts.
So that's where I had to learn and just say, no, it's okay to say no, for instance. You know, if somebody asks me, oh, can you do this for me? No, it's okay to say no. I'm not helping myself, and I wouldn't help the other person certainly neither, because I may be just progressing or helping them in their bad habits.
Yeah, and you know what? I've learned how to say no from a very young age. I was the no guy anyway, so growing up, that's why I think people tend to always come towards me, because I was just a no guy. I was never the yes man my whole life. I could be your friend and we can agree on things that I agree with, but I don't agree with you. No, brother, that's the wrong thing to do. And I never figured I changed my whole estate by this mindset of me saying, no, we're not doing this. No one's allowed to do this, and we're never doing this.
But that is where you're fortunate from your culture. I know that by fact that Jamaican culture is that way. You have a very high self-esteem, which doesn't apply, unfortunately, to a lot of other cultures. You know, it's been ingrained in the Jamaican culture to have a certain way, to have a certain feeling about yourself.
Facts. That's definitely true. So plug everyone with your social media and what you do, man. Tell everyone what you do on your social media.
I mean, I started social media last year in around March, April time, more April time.
You're doing well for someone who started just May last year. You're doing well.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're doing well. Yeah.
Thank you. I was separated from a very, very long-term relationship. I was with an actual narcissist, so it's not something which is just narcissistic qualities. I know you talk about that in your podcast a lot. I've listened to your podcast, but if you can match a lot of traits to a certain disorder, then they do come to realization. At that time, I didn't understand what it was because, as I said, the understanding of what is happening to me I only developed through my academic progression. So when I went through my psychological career and I've done a degree, that's when I started actually understanding that is what's happening and it's not right. Because of my cultural upbringing, unfortunately, women are always seen to serve men. It's just a fact. Which, is,
to a certain extent, is not a bad thing.
But serving is not the right thing, because you must not be submissive others than God, anybody else. That's, you know, there's differences in between showing respect and showing understanding to someone, than serving someone.
What do you mean by serving? Would you let's get onto this topic now. What do you mean by serving someone? Because serving a man is being your duty as a woman, just like a man serves you in his way. There's both. I feel like it's a give and give.
That's because you come from a different cultural upbringing. Serving a man in the Asian society means that you must be submissive, literally submissive to what the man is saying. Regardless of if they're right, if they're wrong, you must listen to that man.
Even if he's beating you, even if he's cussing your family, even if
it's similar to slavery, for instance, having a slave and a master.
That's mad.
And that is the main thing. I mean, even to going back to my own family, regardless of what happened, because my marriage broke down for various serious reasons, I was still being told I should have tried longer. Why am I divorcing? I should have tried to make up, even though they didn't agree with the marriage in the first place anyway. So there's always this misconception that the woman has to be inferior to the man and she must listen to the man.
In the Asian culture, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I can only go back to that culture because that's what I can explain in that way. What was the question actually originally, which you was asking?
I just asked you, what was your social media? You went into
narcissism.
She said, everything come out now.
Yes, absolutely. No, I don't go too much into that, but it was he was a narcissist. The difficulty with narcissists generally is it's a personality disorder. It derives from a lot of problems from your childhood. That's where the deep-rooted things are. So once you learn a lot of things, you learn a lot of attributes from your family, from your upbringing, you then adapt them into your own life. And a narcissist itself is it's a personality who like to adapt to the world or present them to the world as the carer, as the provider, as someone who is always there, but within their own imminent home, within their own imminent relationship. That's when a different person comes out and they become overpowered over the other person. There's gaslighting involved. There's a lot of emotional abuse involved, which other people cannot see because they do not want to portray themselves to other people in that light. But the reason for that often is it comes back to self-identity crisis, a lot of trauma involved, and unless this is kind of addressed, it will never come out. It will never come out. But apart from that, I came out of that relationship about 14 months ago, and I started healing within myself. So I started personally progressing. I don't blame anyone, by the way, because I feel personally that experiences, they're not justified. I'm not justifying bad behavior, but I'm saying that it's part of my life. And I've learned a lot from these things because I can now even better so understand a lot of other behavioral traits which somebody else might not understand. And why I'm able to now even talk openly about that without feeling the shame, the stigma, or the confusion, or having any kind of self-identity crisis, because I've discovered myself. So I came out of that and I thought, first of all, okay, I go into psychology, was looking for different psychology jobs, moving on from general mental health. And someone came along and said, the life coach. So I thought
it used
to myself,
to be mentoring, but now they've got a better word for it.
That's right, that's right. I looked into that because I thought, I did not have much understanding about that at that time, but I researched into that and I thought, that sounds actually quite interesting. Because with psychological positions, as a counsellor, as a therapist, you're very, very limited to the concept, what they present to you. So you can't do any more than that. But looking into the life coaching business, I thought, that sounds so interesting because I have a lot more freedom. With all these different experiences and understanding, I could actually help the person in full rather than just giving them a CBT therapy, for instance, and having to stick to a plan. I can actually help them progress with their life, and the same experiences which I have come out with, I could apply them to help them to understand them better and to be a part of their self-development. And then I came across with all these other issues, which I have been going through the last few years anyway, but through this understanding, I could address them and I could then bring them forward. And I just thought, I want to make the world be a part of that. Of what is happening with my brain, what is happening with my mindset, and the message which I want to put across. And that's how I went into social media. So even down to the point where I've been accused that because I'm on social media, that is why my marriages broke down, which is absolute nonsense, because after I separated, I started social media. And
but even then, that's kind of a stupid reason to even say in general, how can a relationship not survive without social media? If someone has social media, how does that destroy a relationship?
It is again a misconception of cultural understanding, because it was a Muslim man who said that to me. So it's just about, because you've been exposed, suddenly you're breaking the cultural code. That is what the reason is for these things. It's an excuse. But anyway, I started in April doing my social media, and I was very unaware of how it works. So I went slowly into that and started creating my clips. And I thought, it's going really well, because I received so much feedback from people, how much it has been benefiting them, how much it has been helping them, that I thought, I don't want to end up having a little practice in my little town. I want to help the wider audience. I want to help the wider audience. That was my aim, because I didn't want it to just be there and stay there and look after the 1-2 people around me or the 1-2 clients who come along, because I thought that is not creating a change. Because I'm so passionate about that, I wanted the world to know what I actually want to bring out, the message which I want to create more harmony in this world, create more love and understanding in this world, and to be honest, bring more common sense in as well, which has been lost in a lot of people.
Yeah, that's good, man. I think that what you're doing is a good thing, and I think you should keep it up and don't give up, because what happens is when people get a lot of hate, they start to think what they're doing is wrong, because there's always going to be the positive people and there's going to be the bad people. So if you're exposing certain fallacies people are not going to like you for it. And I've come to realize that in this world, you've just got to be yourself.
That's right.
Whether people love you or hate you, the only thing you can be is yourself.
That's right. But you have to also understand that you cannot have everyone love you anyway.
Yeah.
That's why we're so different.
But I think there's some people, social media makes it seem as if everybody should like you. That's what social media
But
makes
that's your perception. I come to a point where I'm very comfortable within myself.
Because you're mature and you're older and you've been through life.
Absolutely.
You've seen, yes,
because
yes.
people often ask me, are you doing that for attention, or you're getting a lot of attention? People call me, which is absolutely crazy. They call me, you're the celebrity on TikTok. I don't see myself as anything. I'm just the messenger which bringing out things which are going on in my brain and which is my passion out to the world, because I want to help people. But people have all sorts of misconception about that, which do not actually, don't get me wrong, I appreciate it if it comes from a good reason, but it doesn't mean anything to me. I don't know if I'm expressing it in the right way. It doesn't actually motivate me or enriches me to, wanting to do more. What motivates me is if I see feedback from people, this has really helped me in my life.
Yeah. That's my motivation as well.
That is what you've done, and I really needed that. This is my motivation. And everything else, you have to understand. If you were not going the right way, you wouldn't progress the right way in your own way, you would not have the haters. You would not have the criticism. They come to people who are actually in the light of attraction, suddenly in the limelight, and want to create a difference. They do not go to people who are insignificant messages and nobody values anything. That is what should actually fuel you, really. You cannot build success without failures.
You can't.
And differences and critiques. You can only build it on the top of your experiences, your failures, your traumas, your critics, and that's when you measure success. However you want to call success.
Come on, that's the truth.
And that is absolutely fine. If somebody comes up, I have a lot of sexually explicit messages as well from people. My DMs are really, really junked up sometimes, and I totally ignore them. But it's just part of life. We put ourselves out there in the public eye. We're going to get all sorts of different people, all sorts of different messages to discourage us. But it's how I manage it. I always say, if I was the doctor and you come to me, you have a problem, and I panic, I fluster, I have no idea, how safe would you feel with me?
Not very safe. Not very safe.
So I need to have my emotional well-being, my emotional control regulated to be able to help you.
Facts.
You can't do it the other way around.
Facts. That's a fact. That's a fact. That's actually a fact.
So that's how you manage it. It's okay if somebody, criticizes you, if somebody comes up with something negative. It's all part of this job. That's what it is.
Facts.
And it's often a reflection of their own insecurities anyway.
I think that's what I've taken from it myself. But now I've learned how to embrace things, It's really important as a human that you learn how to embrace humans in general and understand that there's a balance to everything. You're not going to get 100,000 supporters and not have 20,000 haters. It doesn't. The maths has to be right.
Yeah.
Life is a balance of.
You have to understand that for me to come out to social media, my family totally went against it. That was something they did not want to hear. They have penalized me from everything which you can think of. But I just have a belief. I have a vision. I have a purpose why I'm doing that, which you was talking about purpose. And I want to bring it to the light. And obviously, yes, I do understand that if I was to class in a certain category, fully hijabi in any way, I'm not saying there's anything wrong, but you only attract a certain part of the world or certain group of people, certain audience. You don't attract the world. You just don't. And I have my own beliefs in what I believe and how I believe it, and that's how I portray it to the world. And I stand by it.
That's it, man. Keep doing what you're doing, man. Don't let no one stop you from doing what you got to do, man, because it's important. The message you're putting out there is good. That's why I saw you. I saw the messages you're putting out. Like people that have positive messages, because you need people like that in the world.
Thank you very much. I mean, it would be lovely if some of your audience also sort of follow my YouTube channel. I haven't been putting too much work into that.
Tell them what it is. Tell them so they know.
It's at the moment it's called Psych Shafak, PSYCH SHAFAQ. So after my name, Psychologist Shafak, and I've started the season 1 last year because besides the clip, I think you have to have a balance in who you are as a person, as a professional, and to show them this academic and knowledgeable side of my profession, I decided to bring out a podcast, be a podcast host. So my podcasts are very, very organic built. They're about people, interesting personalities coming from all sorts of walks of lives globally, who have talked about their life experiences, their struggles, their all what we're talking about, conditioning, about what they're facing, how they're progressing in life, what success means for them, all around their mental health. And that is what I've been talking about. And people have been impressed suddenly. Okay, yes, she dances in that clip, but suddenly she's dead serious. She has knowledge. So it needed to be a balance in there where people understand that I'm coming from a point of facts. I'm coming from a point of research. I'm coming from a point of knowledge. I'm not just coming to just be an entertainer there and be a clown. But the podcast itself brought me to that. And the good thing about the podcast is I had guests all over the world. I mean, as I said, I need to put a bit more focus on that, just to progress it a bit more. Season 2 is coming out now. I've already started recording on season 2. That I created very, very good friendships, professional friendships, but excellent friendships with people who you would have never actually met in your life otherwise.
And that's the beauty, man.
Or they would have met you, people such as someone who is head of aviation in Canada, for instance, and has been leading thousands of people. A lot of people know him, and suddenly you are connected, and you are connected in a spiritual way, in a lovely, beautiful way, which I find personally for myself, it's a blessing. It's another blessing as well. If I hadn't focused on these things and I hadn't gone through all these traumas and started being solution focused and understanding these things, creating opportunities, I may have never meet these kind of personalities. And I don't care what social status they have, because coming from a diplomatic background, I've met all sorts of people from all sorts of backgrounds, social status. Money doesn't mean anything to me. Your fame doesn't mean anything to me. Your background doesn't mean anything to me. All what it means is if I get on with your personality or not.
Straight, that's the best way. That's the correct way. So you heard her, check out her YouTube and see what's your Instagram and your TikTok?
It's the Shafak Effect. That's my brand.
Yeah.
And yes, that's my brand. I will change my YouTube channel soon because it became so popular, my brand, over to the Shafak Effect soon as well. But at the moment, it stands on Psych Shafak.
That's it. So